That's why, as president, one of my top priorities is to defend religious liberty and to the cherished role of faith. If you like now, Larry.
Yeah, we lost our signal momentarily, so I had to go in and restart Facebook. So for our Facebook friends, realize that when I have Walt on, we're live streaming on two different programs, and I'm also this morning I'm going to go over and just for protection I'm going to record the audio portion of this because I don't want to lose this. And so anyway, that's kind of what's going on, but I just wanted to let our people know that on Facebook that we're having a little difficulties because we're I found over the years is when you try to do multiple streaming, it takes a lot more RAM, and sometimes you just lose the signal. So I'm going to go over and just check and make sure Facebook. Yeah, Facebook is still up, so we are recording, Walt. But to answer your question, Walt, yeah, this is quite a. It's quite a admission that the New York Archdiocese has tried to circumvent this separation of church and state every time a president runs, and how that Trump was right on board with the Catholics. He gave millions of dollars to support Catholic entities during this time. And Trump says that I want to thank Cardinal Dolan, a very special man, for his extraordinary stewardship of the Archdiocese and for his deep dedication to God and to our nation. What a joke. And he says, let me also thank Mary Indos and the entire Alfred E. Smith Memorial Foundation. Okay, and this is a memorial. This foundation. He says he will never forget. As a young man, he attended this with his father, this Sal Smith dinner, and so he has a long history of aligning with the Catholics. He says, as you know, it's like any other, this Al Smith dinner. Our country and the entire world, he talks about their influence over our nation and over the whole world, and he says the Al Smith Memorial Foundation made a historic $8 million gift to support the children and families of New York. He's promoting Catholicism, is what he's doing, and he says that this amazing group continues a proud tradition of faithful service. Your work reminds us of an essential truth in this country, and especially our religious institutions. As an essential foundation of American freedom, our nation is strong because of Catholics. Okay? He's signaling out there the Catholics, and he even mentions Judge Amy Coney Barrett, who was a Catholic, who he appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States. And so, when people say that he's a member of the Christian faith and he's a Christian, we know that Paula White was his mentor when he ran for president, but he is firmly in the camp, and he's also has the ideology of Zionism as well. We know how he supported Zionist activities, and so it's very evident that he's part of the New World Order. He's part of ushering in. Michael Orr is with us. Michael made the comment, "Have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them." Ephesians 5:11. Very good, Mike. Glad to see you're with us today. And I also want to say hello to Ranjit Biswas from the pastor in Botswana, in Bangladesh, who's with us as well. I'll turn it back over to Walt. But Walt, you're right. I mean, this is nothing but ecumenism at its finest, and yet we say we believe in separation of church and state. Where's the separation of church and state in the Al Smith dinner?
And something that can be brought up here too. When you go to the Vatican, they have an obelisk in a sun wheel right out in there in front of the Vatican. An obelisk that was brought there from Egypt. And when you go to Washington D.C. and you look out for the Capitol building, you see an obelisk. Where is there any separation of church and state when both the Vatican and the United States have an obelisk out in front of their building, and the Capitol building, in the Vatican from a distance look alike. So where is there any separation of church and state? Because that obelisk represents a religion. And what religion is that? The United States is not Babylon, because Babylon is a system. It's a system. And in other words, it's not one country. Babylon is all through the world. And so what I'm trying to bring out here, we're trying to bring out here is how close the ties between Rome and the United States. Like inside of the Capitol building in the rotunda, when you look, and I've been there. When you walk into the Capitol, into the rotunda, and you look up into the rotunda, you see the apotheosis. They have George Washington deified. That paint that you see in the top of the ceiling was painted by a Roman Catholic. And I want to say, what I'm saying here is I'm bringing up opening up quite a big window of what we're talking about. But if you want to see the facts, you can go to my website, branddesignexposed.com, and scroll down about a quarter of the page down, and you'll see the picture of the fellow of the boot of a boot pressed on the top of the head, and it has the insignia on the boot of the United Nations, because you understand that the papacy has a seat in the United Nations. They have a vote. There's no separation. How can you, that there again, separation of church and state? The Lutherans, the Methodists, Presbyterians, they don't have a seat in the United Nations. And of course, the United Nations is the New World Order. And where is the New World Order located? See, it's located in our country, in New York.
Yes, America is Babylon, and Babylon is going to fall. We know that. And also we know that the reality that's staring us right in the face right now as we speak, there's been a charismatic renewal at a university, Asbury University, and I have come to learn, because people have shared this with me, that every day at noon the Mass is said on this campus. There are Catholic priests involved in this charismatic renewal. They're promoting the Jesus film and the Jesus Revolution. It's not the Jesus of the Bible. And it's also all-inclusive of the LGBT community, calling themselves a Christian renewal. This is the furthest thing from Christian. Catholics are not Christians. Roman Catholicism is not Christian. And so when you have the Mass being said right in the university at noon every day, this is putting your approval on transubstantiation, which is a lie. The cookie is not Jesus. We can go to Hebrews, and it says very clearly in the book of Hebrews that he entered once into the holy place and sat down. Jesus Christ does not need to be re-crucified over and over and over again in the Mass. And we go to Revelation and we find that this, we can actually see where the daily sacrifice. What is the daily sacrifice? Well, we have a daily sacrifice going on at Asbury College at noon every day. It's blasphemy. What are your thoughts on that, Walt?
Well, I think the conclusion of this letter of the Al Smith dinner. See, this was a speech that Trump made to the Al Smith dinner. But I think his concluding paragraph it tells everything. Let's talk about it and make some comments about it. Now, this is Trump speaking, quote, few institutions in history, meaning the papacy, have done more for New York, more for America, or more for people of the world. Now let's just read that all now. For few institutions in history have done more for New York, more for America, or more for people of the world than the Catholic Church. And remember, the Pope has a vote in the United Nations. He's invited. There's no, and few people recognize this here. We just, because we haven't been educated on it. But the papacy is a country. It's a sovereign country. Has its own post office. I mean, it's a small country, but it's a country. And remember, and it is now the system. Now, let me get that straight. Babylon is not a country. It's a political system. It's a system. And the Roman Catholic Church system is Babylonian. And so I want to finish that little paragraph.
I took that.
Institutions. I'm going to say this. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Walt. I wanted you to read it. Yeah, I had to take it down so I could save some RAM. So go ahead.
Few institutions in history have done more for New York, more for America, or more for people of the world. That's the New World Order. Than the Catholic Church. From the parishes of this city come came the soldiers who fought to end slavery, the workers who raised up the tower skyline to Manhattan, the chaplains who have landed on the beaches of Guadalcanal, the nuns who marched for civil rights, and the police officers and firefighters who we love so much, who ran into the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001. Now this is the concluding sentence, little paragraph. Now more than ever, our nation needs a renewal. And understand, this are the words of Trump. This is in the letter. Now more than ever, our nation needs a renewal of the values that the organization promotes and that the Catholic faithful live out each and every day in peace. We love the Catholic people. We love the Catholic religion. And above all, we respect it greatly. You know, it has sediments and pieces of this revival that's going on over all the colleges and stuff now. This is how Rome operates.
Yes, and Rick, we've got Purpose-Driven Life, Rick Warren, going to that campus, and he is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. And by the way, it's an equal opportunity religion, because Joe Biden is Catholic. He's pro Pope Francis. Pope Francis is right in the midst of this because he's part of the charismatic renewal movement. He was on with Palmer at Kenneth Copeland's church in a video. Pope Francis actually was blessed by Kenneth Copeland and prayed for by Kenneth Copeland. This is all a part of the charismatic renewal movement. Where's the separation of church? We have Joe Biden on one side of the Democrats and Pelosi, and on the other side we have, remember Bonner? He was Catholic when the Pope came and visited. He was one of the ones instrumental in bringing him to the Congress to speak. And now we have Donald Trump exalting the Catholics. And so I'll just say it as it is, real clearly, and a lot of people get upset when Walt and I say this, but Pope Francis is of the spirit of Antichrist. That's what it is. It's not Christian. It's the furthest thing from Christian. What would you say? What would you say if you were talking to like an old school Baptist or a primitive Baptist or maybe even a Reformed church, and they said, "Oh, I don't get involved in all that doctrine. I just rest in Christ." What would your response be to that, Walt?
Well, I would go back to the founding of this country. You see, history is not being rewritten. You know, history, parts of history are just eliminated. Now, this is one part of history that is all I'm going to say now is I'm going to give some history. Before 1776, less than 1% of the population, less than 1%, were Roman Catholics. In other words, right up in it's up on my website. You know. Now, you say, well, Walt, where did you get that fact? Less than 1% of the population was Catholic. I'll tell you where I got that. Out of a Catholic publication. It's called the Catholic Founding Fathers, written by you see, what I'm saying now don't know anything about the Catholic founding fathers. And who were they? One was Charles Carroll. He was the most wealthiest man in the colonies. He was making the ammunition for the American Revolution War, the American Revolution. Daniel Carroll was also, he was a Freemason also, but you could, all this information that I'm saying here can be I have this information, everything I'm saying in a book. It's called The Vatican Jesuit Global Conspiracy, Book 2. Now less than 1% of the population were, and they couldn't hold office. They couldn't hold civil office. Now you say, well, why? This is what most people don't, and nothing's ever talked about this. There's been over 6,000 books written on the Jesuits. And a lot of people, the greatest percentage of people in the United States, they don't even know who the Jesuits were. But let me get back to the founding fathers. There were three: Charles Carroll, Daniel Carroll, and John Carroll. John Carroll was the first archdiocese in the United States, and the founder of Georgetown University. And you say, well, what year did we get Georgetown University? What year did it come into existence? In 1789, the same year that we became officially a country. Now, see, they haven't rewritten history. The American people don't. The American masses don't know this history. And I think it's a good time to interject this. There are 28 Jesuit universities in this country, 244 colleges, and 50 Jesuit high schools. I'm saying this now, and correct me, Larry, when I make this statement now. If academia and all the colleges, every state has a like in Oregon, we have an Oregon State and the University of Oregon. In Washington State, we have a Washington State University and the University of Washington. All higher academia is Babylonian education. They're teaching Babylonian. They're not teaching. They're teaching humanism. And maybe you can even clarify that statement a little bit more than how I said it, Larry.
Well, humanism is the exaltation of the creature. And, as a student that went to the University of Kansas and participated in many classes of the classical humanists and the philosophers and the psychologists of the day, I've often told people that the humanists and the Roman Catholics and the Arminians and the agnostics all agree upon one thing, and that is the lie of free will. In fact, the Council of Trent says, if anyone says that a man does not have a free will, let him be anathema. And I would highly recommend that you get your hands on this book, The Lies of Free Will, because it gives the history originating right back to Lucifer himself of free will. Now, I want to welcome aboard a special viewer that we have on with us, and I had him up here a minute ago. Let me see if I can get him up here. He's from Bangladesh, and also we have a viewer from Kenya on as well. Daniel Obanda, welcome aboard from Kenya. And it's amazing how many people we get from around the world watching this Facebook program. And I think of all the countries in the world that are influenced by Roman Catholicism, Pope Francis has quite a sordid history in Argentina. If you ever want to get your boat loaded, Google up, his activities in Argentina. A lot of people were murdered and killed in Argentina. And these people have absolutely no regard for human life. How can I say that? Well, 50 million were killed during the Inquisition. And it kind of really blows my mind that you have someone endorsing Pope Francis like Billy Graham did before he died, and like other people that have said, well, this is the greatest moral leader that we've ever had in the history of man. And this is coming from an organization that killed 50 million Christians. What's moral about that is my question. How can you endorse? And by the way, it's a well-known fact that the Roman Catholic Church is absolutely full of sexual abuse of the nuns. If you don't believe it, go to Berean Beacon, Richard Bennett's BereanBeacon.org. You'll get your boat loaded, because Richard Bennett shows all the sexual abuse of the nuns.
Jesuits in Rome is always used is misdirection. They get to people start blaming they blame the Jews. Now listen, when you look at history, the Jews in Rome were partners. They crucified Christ. They were partners. And then you have people saying, well, the Jesuits are Jews. Well, when you say that, when you say that to the average person, when you say Jews, you're talking about blood. It's a misdirection, because you keep talking about the Jews. The Jews do this, they do this, they do that, and Rome never gets a peep.
I've been accused of being a shill for the Jews. I'm not a shill for the Jews. I've taken a very avid stance against Zionism, the ideology of Zionism, and the whole idea. The Apostle Paul is real clear. He is a Jew who is one inwardly, circumcision of the heart. We're talking about the distinction between physical Israel and spiritual Israel. But Walt is right. There is a cabal between the Jesuits and the Zionists. And let me just say this. Let's remind people, Walt, the origin of Ignatius Loyola and the Jesuits, the whole origin was Counter-Reformation, to stamp out the Reformation. And by the way, the purpose of the Jesuits has never changed. That's their purpose today, to stamp out any form of Protestantism. And I think they've done a pretty good job of it. That's why we've got Kenneth Copeland saying there is no longer any protest. That's why we have evangelical churches slobbering on the slipper of the Pope, so to speak. And so we have today such a hodgepodge of churches all entering into Rome. It's what it is. Going back to Rome. I don't think they ever came out of it, but anyway, that's It's all Counter-Reformation.
And everything that we're talking about here, on this book, this is book 2, the Vatican Jesuit Global Conspiracy, book 2 and book 1. Now, book 1 describes where did Babylon come from, and who is representing Babylon today in 2023. And the reason why I say what I'm saying is, in other words, you can go to this book, and by the way, this is up on the internet, the Vatican Jesuit Global Conspiracy, book 1 and book 2, you'll find it. But if you want it right now, you can have it for nothing by going to my website. I have 4 books that I published, and in the first 2 books, the first 2 books that are up on the internet are published by Lulu, but you can go up on my website, and in a quiet moment, you don't have to buy the book, but it is nice to have a book in your hand, and they're very inexpensive. Book 1 is I think it's $10.46 or something like that, and that other book is $16. But we're not here to sell books. It's up on my webpage. My webpage has been viewed. There are 195 nations in the world. 195. My book has been viewed in 186 countries. And of course, they can control the views of a website. I've seen how with the algorithms. Give you an example. You used to be able to put in the Google search obelisk meaning, obelisk meaning, and used to come. I used to be the first hit. But now when you put in obelisk meaning, I'm way down the page. And the only way you'll find my website is if somebody gives you the address. And the address is granddesignexposed, all one word, .com. And if you're interested in history, in the love of history, there's 2 kinds of people. There's people that know the truth, and people that love the truth. Because when you understand the truth, I mean, it's all in book 1. Who's Babylon? Well, there's 20 chapters in this book. There's 20 chapters. And there's quite a history. So some other broadcasts will just talk about this book. But there's a lot of. It's amazing. It's amazing how the truth. In other words, when you have control of how many, this subject that we're talking about will never be viewed by somebody that's been through a seminary. People that have been through a seminary never talk about the Jesuits. Very few, and so when you understand, I mean, the elephant is right in our front living room. It's right in, like we have the David Bartons. that that tour Washington claimed that the United States and our founding fathers were Christians. I mean, in book two, you'll find you'll find in book two. In book two is kind of a book review of a history that hasn't been that has been written, but is left out. See, there's over 6,000 books written on Jesuits, but they're just kind of left out. They don't talk about it. But there's one chapter in this book that I think I want, and you can go over and read this today. You can read this today. It's the name of this chapter is actually the last chapter in the book. It's called Christians and Babylonian Politics. Babylonian Politics. And what we see today, it was written by I met him on the internet, a young man. He lived in Texas. He taught U.S. history in the 8th grade. And he's the one that wrote this article. It's a tremendous article. And it's actually like this article is up on the internet on my webpage. There's 40 different buttons, little blue buttons, and you might say there are 40 chapters. But click on Essential Reading, and you'll get a copy. You can read this today. Now, if you're listening to this, you can go to my website and go to that button, click on Essential Reading, and you'll get this article. You'll get this. It's a PDF. It's up there on a PDF file. Anyway, Larry, I think we all have an attention span. This is a vast subject.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, we're gonna need to wind this down because we only have 60 minutes on the Google link, and then Facebook has already cut us off once. Now we're still on Facebook, so we have two parts, part 1 and part 2, but we've been on the second part is 39 minutes. The first part was around 10 minutes, so we've been on almost 50 minutes on Facebook as well, so we probably need to wind this down, Walt.
Well, I want to finish it with everything that I've said. The 2 books I mentioned and stuff, they can be if you go to my website, you'll see it. I mean, I can't tell you. If you poke around that page, you'll see where I've got an emblem. You'll find it. You'll find I put up 4 books. And one book is one book is the 4 books is the first one is the Vatican Jesuit Global Conspiracy. That's book 2 up on the internet. But this book you can download this book too. The Papacy is the Antichrist, a demonstration by J.A. Wiley. And then the thing of it is, and the third book is Mystery Babylon. Now, up on the internet, it's called the Vatican Jesuit Global Conspiracy Book 1, see? But in other words, this book to me is the most important book because it defines Mystery Babylon. Mystery Babylon. And once you understand Mystery Babylon, all the current events, everything will fall into place. And then I have a book up there, Rome's Responsibility for the Assassination of Abraham Lincoln, authored by Thomas M. Harris. And so I have 4 books up there. And
by the way, the 2 books,
I think the most important book,
the 2 books that Walt has done the introductions to, the Vatican Jesuit Global Conspiracy, I put a link up on Facebook to lulu.com. You can obtain any of those books or any of the books that we've shown you on Facebook today, including The Lies of Free Will, God Does Not Love Everyone, But He Does Love His Elect from Everlasting to Everlasting, and Biblical Christianity, as well as the book Philip versus the State of Missouri. All of those books are available on lulu.com. I put a link on there. You can go to that link and then put the title in, and they'll pull it up, and you can order whichever books you wanna order.
Yeah, yes. And like I said, you know, everything that we've said, I have in writing. It's up on my webpage. I have a button called the Catholic Founding Fathers. Now you say, well, Walt, where did you get that title? That's an article. If you put in the internet, the Catholic Founding Fathers, you'll come to this on a Catholic educational website. The Roman Catholics and Carol Carter, who wrote this, you know, the Catholic Founding Fathers, they're not ashamed of the history. I mean, Americans don't know who Charles Carroll and Daniel Carroll and John Carroll are. It's again that example of history just left out. And me and Larry did a broadcast years ago, and it was up there, the Catholic Founding Fathers.